Everyone talks about wanting success, the nice house, the freedom, the respect. But here's what nobody puts in the highlight reel: the sleepless nights, the relationships that quietly fell apart, the version of yourself you had to leave behind just to get there. I'm not here to scare you out of your ambitions. I'm here to tell you the truth that most success gurus are too afraid to say out loud. Success isn't free. It has a price tag, and most people never read the fine print. If you want to know exactly what that price is before you pay it, stick around. And if this kind of raw, honest content is what you've been looking for, hit that subscribe button because we go deep here every single week. Part 1. The myth we were all sold. Let's start with something uncomfortable. Think about every motivational video you've ever watched. Every book about grinding, hustle, and making it. Every Instagram caption from someone sitting on a yacht saying, "I started with nothing." What do they all have in common? They show you the destination, never the journey. And when they do talk about the journey, they romanticize it. They make the struggle sound poetic. They make the sacrifice sound cool. I slept in my car for 6 months. I worked 20-hour days. I gave up everything. And somehow in the telling, all of that pain is wrapped in a bow because, hey, they made it, so it was worth it, right? Wrong. Or at least, not necessarily. Here's the myth we've all been sold. Success is the natural reward for hard work and sacrifice. Pay the price, get the prize. It sounds fair. It sounds almost mathematical. And that's exactly why it's so dangerous. Because here's what that myth doesn't tell you. Not everyone who pays the price gets the prize. Some people pay everything. Their health, their relationships, their youth, and still don't make it by conventional standards. And some people who do make it look back and realize the price they paid wasn't worth what they got. And almost no one was told up front exactly what the price would be before they started paying it. You wouldn't agree to buy a house without knowing the total cost. You wouldn't sign a contract without reading the fine print. But millions of people dive headfirst into the pursuit of success without ever stopping to ask, what exactly am I agreeing to here? What is this actually going to cost me? That's what this video is about. I'm not here to tell you not to pursue success. I'm not here to sugarcoat it either. I'm here to lay out, as clearly and honestly as I can, the real price of success, what it actually demands, why most people don't see it coming, and how you can pursue your ambitions without accidentally destroying everything else that matters in the process. Let's get into it. Part 2. What success actually means and why most people get it wrong. Before we can talk about the price of success, we need to agree on what success even is. Because here's the thing, most people are paying for something they never clearly defined. In American culture especially, success has a default definition. It looks like this: a 6-figure income, ideally 7, a nice house in a good neighborhood, a corner office, or better yet, your own company, the ability to travel whenever you want, respect, status, recognition. And there's nothing inherently wrong with any of those things. But here's the problem. When you adopt someone else's definition of success, you end up paying the price for someone else's dream. So before we go any further, I want you to do something that feels simple, but is actually incredibly hard. Define success on your own terms, not your parents' terms, not your LinkedIn feed's terms, not your college roommate's terms, yours. What does a genuinely good life look like for you? What would make you feel at 70 years old that you lived well? What kind of person do you want to be? Not just what kind of career do you want to have. I'm not asking you to be anti-ambition. Ambition is powerful and beautiful. But unfocused ambition, ambition pointed at goals you never actually chose, is one of the most expensive traps a person can fall into. Because here's the brutal math. The price of success is fixed. What changes is what you're buying. If you're chasing someone else's version of success, you're paying a massive price for something you might not even want when you get there. Part 3, the real currencies of success. Here's something no one puts in a motivational post. Success doesn't cost money, it costs everything else. The real currencies of success are 1. Time. Time is the most obvious cost, and yet people wildly underestimate it. Building something meaningful doesn't take a few months. It rarely takes a few years. Real, sustainable success typically takes a decade or more of consistent, focused effort. Jeff Bezos started Amazon in 1994. It wasn't until 2015, 21 years later, that Amazon was valued at over $250 billion. Bezos himself has said that Amazon was an overnight success that took 10 years. Wright brothers spent years failing, rebuilding, and failing again before their 12-second flight at Kitty Hawk in 1903. Most people know the moment. Almost nobody knows the decade of obsession that preceded it. What does this mean for you? It means if you're building something, a business, a career, a creative body of work, you need to be prepared to give years to it. Not spare time, not weekend hours. Significant, sustained, primary focus time. And that time has to come from somewhere. The average American watches over 4 hours of television per day. Successful entrepreneurs and high performers typically cut that number to near zero. They give up leisure, they give up spontaneity, they give up large chunks of their social lives, especially in the early years. This is not a judgment, it's a trade. But it's a trade you should make consciously. 2. Energy. Here's what nobody tells you about working hard. It's not just physically exhausting. It's mentally and emotionally exhausting in ways that compound over time. Entrepreneurship, creative work, high-stakes careers, these aren't just jobs. They consume you. You think about them in the shower. You wake up at 3 a.m. running through scenarios. You're present at your kid's birthday party, but a part of your mind is somewhere else entirely. Psychologists call this cognitive load, the mental bandwidth occupied by ongoing tasks, problems, and decisions. And the higher the stakes of what you're building, the heavier that load becomes. Over time, carrying that load takes a toll. Studies on founders and high performers consistently show elevated rates of anxiety, depression, and burnout. A 2018 study published in the journal Small Business Economics found that entrepreneurs are 50% more likely to report having a mental health condition than non-entrepreneurs. They experience higher rates of depression, ADHD, substance abuse, and bipolar disorder. This doesn't mean don't do it. It means go in with your eyes open. It means build recovery and rest into your system from the very beginning, not as a luxury, but as a strategy, because you cannot build long-term success on a burned-out engine. 3. Relationships. This one is the hardest to talk about because it's the most personal, and it's the one that tends to cause the deepest regret. The pursuit of success, especially in its early, most intense phases, puts enormous strain on relationships. Marriages, friendships, family bonds. The statistics are sobering. According to multiple studies, entrepreneurs divorce at higher rates than the general population. Founders who work 60-plus hour weeks report significantly less relationship satisfaction than those who work 40. And the friends you have before you make it often drift away, not out of malice, but because your time, energy, and interests have shifted so dramatically. There's a specific dynamic that doesn't get talked about enough: the loneliness of ambition. When you're driven toward a big goal, you often find yourself in a strange kind of isolation. The people closest to you may not fully understand what you're trying to build or why. They may worry about you. They may resent the time you're giving to your work. They may support you in words, but quietly wish you would just slow down. And on the flip side, when you do find people who get it, other founders, other high performers, other obsessives, you may find yourself more emotionally connected to those relationships than to the ones you've had for decades. That's disorienting, and it changes people. I'm not saying success will destroy your relationships. Many people build something great and maintain beautiful marriages and deep friendships, but it requires intentionality. It requires treating your relationships with the same strategic attention you give your work, which is actually harder than it sounds. Because relationships don't have metrics. You can't look at a dashboard and know whether your marriage is healthy. 4. Identity. Perhaps the most underrated cost of success is what it does to your sense of self. When you pour yourself into a pursuit for years, that pursuit becomes deeply intertwined with your identity. You stop being a person who runs a business and start being a founder. You stop being someone who creates and start being an artist, or an entrepreneur, or a performer. On one hand, this is powerful. It gives you a sense of purpose and direction. On the other, it's fragile, Because if that thing fails, if the business collapses, if the career stalls, if the creative project gets rejected, you don't just lose a job or a project. You lose a part of who you are. And even when things go well, the identity shift can be disorienting. The person you become in the pursuit of success is often not the same person who started the journey. Your values may shift, your relationships may change, your sense of what matters may be completely different. This isn't bad by definition. Growth requires change, but it's worth acknowledging that the version of you that arrives at success may not be the version of you that set out for it. That gap can be exhilarating. It can also be deeply unsettling. 5. Health. Last but absolutely not least, and I say this as someone who has seen it up close, the physical cost of sustained high performance is real. Chronic sleep deprivation, elevated cortisol from ongoing stress, poor nutrition because there's no time to eat well, a sedentary lifestyle because all the time that might go to movement now goes to work. These aren't just minor inconveniences. They are compounding risks that, over years, can lead to serious health consequences. Arianna Huffington, co-founder of the Huffington Post, collapsed from exhaustion in 2007. She woke up in a pool of blood after hitting her head on her desk. In the aftermath, she wrote a book called Thrive, in which she made a powerful argument. The conventional definition of success, money plus power, is missing a third metric, well-being. And without it, the whole thing falls apart. The irony is painful. People sacrifice their health to build wealth, and then spend their wealth trying to recover their health. Part 4, the hidden tax. What success costs after you get it. Here's something that almost never gets discussed. The price of success doesn't end when you achieve it. In many ways, it just begins. This is the hidden tax that most success stories completely ignore. Think about what happens when you actually make it. Maintenance costs. Once you've built something, a business, a reputation, a platform, you have to maintain it. The standards are higher. The expectations are higher. The competition is more intense, not less. You can't coast. You can't take extended breaks. The machine has to keep running. And now you're responsible for more than just yourself. You have employees, clients, stakeholders, followers, all depending on you to keep delivering. The goalpost problem. One of the strangest and most documented psychological phenomena in the study of success is what's sometimes called hedonic adaptation, our tendency to quickly adapt to new circumstances and return to our baseline level of happiness. In other words, you achieve the goal, feel great for a little while, and then the goalpost moves. Suddenly, $1 million isn't enough. You want 10. The company you wanted to build isn't enough. You want a bigger one. The recognition you craved doesn't feel satisfying anymore. You want more. This isn't a character flaw. It's neurology. Your brain is wired to seek, not to arrive. Which means the finish line you've been running toward your entire career isn't actually a finish line. It's just another starting point. Relationship to money changes. People assume that once you have money, you'll relax about money. Often the opposite is true. High earners and wealthy individuals can develop complicated, anxious relationships with money. Fear of losing it, pressure to grow it, discomfort around people who don't have it, disconnection from the values they held when they didn't. Studies have actually found that beyond a certain income level, roughly $75,000 in 2010, research by Daniel Kahneman. More recent studies put the number higher when adjusted for inflation, around $100,200, depending on cost of living. Additional money has diminishing returns on day-to-day emotional well-being. After that threshold, it's the meaning of the work and the quality of relationships that drive happiness, not the next comma in the bank account. Loneliness at the top. There's a cliche that sounds trite, but is deeply true. It's lonely at the top. Not because successful people can't make friends, but because the dynamics of relationships fundamentally shift when you have power, money, or status. You're never quite sure who's around you because of who you are versus what you have. You carry the weight of decisions that affect other people's livelihoods. You can't fully be yourself in many professional contexts because there's always a power dynamic at play. CEOs regularly report feeling profoundly isolated. Founders speak of the loneliness of having no one to truly talk to because everyone around them either works for them or is affected by their decisions. This is the hidden tax. The price doesn't stop at achievement. In some ways, it just changes form. Part 5, the people who paid and regret it. I want to share some stories, not to be dark, but because real examples are the most powerful teachers. Tony Hsieh, the visionary founder of Zappos, one of the most beloved workplace culture stories in American business history. Hsieh sold Zappos to Amazon for $1.2 billion in 2009. He was, by any external measure, an extraordinary success. And yet in his final years, by multiple accounts, Hsieh was deeply unhappy. He struggled with isolation, substance use, and a painful disconnection from the relationships and experiences that had once given him joy. He died in 2020 at age 46 after a house fire in Connecticut. He was high at the time. His story is a tragedy and a warning. Howard Hughes, one of the wealthiest, most successful industrialists and aviators in American history. By his 40s, Hughes was completely reclusive, deeply mentally ill, and lived in terror and isolation. His success, which was vast and genuine, did not protect him from profound suffering. It may have, in some ways, enabled it. Robin Williams, perhaps the most beloved comedian and actor of his generation, globally adored, creatively brilliant, and in his private life, struggling with depression, addiction, and the early stages of a devastating neurological illness. The man who made millions of people laugh died feeling alone. Now, I want to be careful here. I am not saying success caused these outcomes. Mental illness, addiction, and tragedy are complex, multifaceted, and they strike people at all income levels and career stages. These men might have struggled regardless of their success. But what these stories do illustrate is this: external achievement is not a solution to internal suffering. And many people pursue success as though it is, as though making it will fix the pain, quiet the self-doubt, fill the emptiness. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it amplifies all of it. Part 6, the people who paid and don't regret it. Now, because I believe in balance and truth, let's talk about the other side. Because there are also people who paid an enormous price for their success, sacrificed sleep, relationships, health, comfort, and who look back with genuine satisfaction. Not because the journey was easy, but because the cost was worth what they were buying. Sarah Blakely, founder of Spanx, self-made billionaire, and one of the most authentic success stories in modern entrepreneurship. Blakely spent years selling fax machines door to door while developing her idea in secret. She faced rejection after rejection. She mortgaged her time, her social life, her stability, and she'll tell you, clearly and without caveat, that it was worth it. Not because of the money, but because of who she became in the process. Oprah Winfrey, a woman who grew up in poverty and overcame extraordinary hardship to build the most influential media empire in American television history. Yes, the journey cost her. There were years of grinding, of being underestimated, of sacrificing personal comfort for professional growth. But Oprah has consistently spoken about her life as purposeful, as aligned with her values and her calling. The price she paid was for her dream, not someone else's, and that makes all the difference. Kobe Bryant, love him or complicate your feelings about him, but as a case study in the price of greatness, Kobe is unparalleled. He was the first person in the gym and the last to leave. He missed social events, prioritized basketball above almost everything else during his playing career, and was often described as difficult, demanding, and relentless. He paid an enormous personal price for his level of excellence. And by his own account, in his final years, as a devoted father and creative force, he had no regrets. He chose his price consciously. He knew what he was trading and what he was getting. That clarity made all the difference. The common thread in these stories isn't talent, it isn't luck, it isn't even work ethic, though all three of these people worked extraordinarily hard. The common thread is intentionality. They knew what they wanted. They knew what it would cost. They made the trade consciously. And they found meaning in the journey, not just the destination. Part 7, the framework. How to pay the price without losing yourself. Okay, so we've established what the price is. We've seen what happens to people who pay it blindly and what happens to people who pay it wisely. Now let's get practical. Here is a framework for pursuing success. Real, meaningful, sustainable success in a way that doesn't require you to sacrifice everything that matters. Step 1. Define your personal success equation. Get a blank piece of paper or open a notes app and write down your answers to these questions. What would my life look like at 60 if I lived it exactly as I want? What are the 3 to 5 things I value most? Not what you should value, what you actually value. What does enough look like for me financially? What number would genuinely make me feel secure and free? What kind of relationships do I want to have? What do those relationships require from me? What kind of work makes me feel most alive? This isn't a goal-setting exercise. This is a definition exercise, because you cannot make smart trade-offs if you don't know what you're trading toward. Step 2. Do a price audit. Once you have your success equation, look honestly at what you're currently doing or planning to do, and ask, what is this actually going to cost me? Be specific, not just time. How many hours a week? Not just relationships. Which specific relationships will be affected, and how? Not just health. What specific habits are you sacrificing? This is where most people flinch and stop. They don't want to confront the real cost because confronting it feels like it might talk them out of doing it. But here's the truth. Knowing the cost doesn't mean you won't pay it. It means you'll pay it consciously. And conscious payment is categorically different from accidental loss. Step 3. Identify your non-negotiables. Every person pursuing something meaningful needs a short list of non-negotiables, the things they will not sacrifice regardless of what the pursuit demands. Maybe it's, I will always be present for Sunday dinners with my family, or I will never miss a significant event in my kids' lives, or I will always get 7 hours of sleep, or I will always exercise 4 days a week. These non-negotiables are not weakness. They are structural supports. They are the things that keep you from falling apart while everything else is being demanded of you. And they are the things that, if you protect them, allow you to look back on the journey without regret, even if some parts of it were brutal. Write them down, revisit them, protect them like your most important asset, because they are. Step 4, build recovery into the system. From day one, this is one of the biggest mistakes high performers make. They treat recovery, rest, relationships, play, exercise, spiritual practice as rewards for achieving milestones. I'll take a vacation after we close this round. I'll reconnect with my spouse when things slow down. I'll start exercising when I have more time. Here's the problem. Things never slow down. There's always another milestone. The reward keeps moving forward, and recovery keeps getting pushed back. The solution is to invert the model. Build recovery into the system from the beginning. Schedule it. Protect it. Treat it with the same seriousness as your most important meeting. Not because you deserve a break, but because a burned-out version of you cannot build what you're trying to build. Recovery isn't indulgence. It's infrastructure. Step 5. Audit your relationships regularly. Every 6 months, or at minimum once a year, do a relationship audit. Ask yourself, who are the 5 people I'm spending the most time with? Are these relationships making me better, or are they depleting me? Are there people I deeply care about whom I've been neglecting? Is my marriage partnership healthy? When did we last truly connect? Are there friendships that have drifted that I want to restore? Relationships don't fail all at once. They erode slowly through small neglects that accumulate over time. A relationship audit is a way to catch erosion before it becomes irreparable. And when the audit shows problems, address them. Don't file it away with the intention of getting to it later. Later has a way of becoming never. Step 6, decouple your identity from your output. This one is advanced but critically important. Learn to separate who you are from what you do. Your work matters, your results matter, but they are not you. You are a full human being with relationships, values, curiosity, a history, a body, of which your career or business is just one part. When you fuse your identity with your work, failure becomes catastrophic, success becomes hollow, and the journey itself becomes joyless. Every setback is an existential threat. Every win has to be bigger than the last just to maintain your sense of self. Instead, practice what psychologists call self-complexity, maintaining a rich, multidimensional sense of yourself that is not solely dependent on any one role or outcome. You're a parent, a friend, a learner, a neighbor, a person with weird hobbies and a sense of humor, and a professional. All of those things constitute who you are. No single one of them defines you. This doesn't make you less committed to your work. Paradoxically, it makes you more resilient because the storms that inevitably come don't threaten your entire identity. They're just setbacks in one domain of a full life. Step 7. Practice regular recalibration. Success is not a destination, it's a direction. And directions need to be recalibrated regularly. Every year, ideally every quarter, stop and ask yourself, am I still heading where I want to go? Have my values or priorities shifted? Is the price I'm currently paying still worth what I'm buying? What needs to change? The willingness to recalibrate, to course correct, to reassess, to sometimes walk away from a path that's no longer serving you, is one of the hallmarks of genuinely successful people. Not the ones who grind until they collapse, but the ones who build something and stay themselves in the process. Part 8. The uncomfortable truth about sacrifice. Let's talk about sacrifice, because the word gets thrown around a lot in success culture, and I think it's deeply misunderstood. People hear sacrifice and they imagine suffering that is noble, temporary, and ultimately rewarded. Like a movie montage. The hero goes through the fire, emerges stronger, and claims their prize. Real sacrifice rarely works that way. Real sacrifice often looks like this. You give something up, you don't always get it back, and sometimes the trade doesn't pay off the way you hoped. That's not poetic. That's just true. And here's the part that's even harder to sit with. Not every sacrifice is worth making. Some of the things people sacrifice in pursuit of success are irreplaceable. Time with their children when they were young, the health of a marriage that could have been saved, years of health they can never recover, the version of themselves that existed before the grind. I am not saying don't sacrifice. I am saying choose your sacrifices with extreme intentionality. Know what you're giving up. Know that you may not get it back. And know that the choice is yours. So make it consciously. There is a meaningful difference between sacrifice and loss. Sacrifice is when you give something up for something you've consciously determined is worth more. Loss is when you give something up accidentally, without realizing what was happening until it's gone. The goal is to make sacrifices, not to incur losses. Part 9. The role of meaning. Why some people thrive under pressure. You might be wondering at this point, some people seem to handle all of this so much better than others. Why? The research on this is fascinating and relatively consistent. The single biggest predictor of resilience in the face of the costs of success is a sense of meaning. Not just motivation, not just work ethic, meaning. Viktor Frankl, the Austrian psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, wrote in Man's Search for Meaning that human beings can endure almost anyhow if they have a strong enough why. He observed this in the most extreme circumstances imaginable, Nazi concentration camps. The people who survived psychologically, not just physically, but psychologically, were those who were able to maintain a sense of purpose, even in the midst of horror. This principle applies, with all necessary humility about the comparison, to the journey of ambitious pursuit. When the work is meaningful, when it connects to something larger than money, status, or winning, the price feels different. It's still a price. You still pay it. But it doesn't deplete you in the same way, because the work itself is replenishing something. This is why entrepreneurs who are purely profit-driven burn out faster than those who have a genuine mission. It's why performers who are chasing fame and validation struggle more than those who are driven by a love of the craft. It's why the purpose gap, the distance between what you do and why you do it, is one of the most powerful sources of burnout. Find the meaning in what you're building, not the meaning you perform for a TED Talk. The meaning that gets you out of bed on the mornings when nothing is going right, when the effort feels pointless, when the goal feels impossibly far away. That meaning is what makes the price payable. Part 10, a note on timing. The price is not the same at every stage. One last thing before I wrap up the main content, and it's something I wish more people talked about. The price of success is not fixed across the timeline of your life. There are seasons when the cost of pursuing ambition is relatively lower, when you have fewer obligations, more energy, and more flexibility to take risks. And there are seasons when the same pursuit would cost far more because the stakes are higher and the collateral damage would be greater. Early in your career, before a mortgage, before kids, before major health issues, before the weight of accumulated responsibilities, is generally the time when you can pay the highest price with the lowest collateral damage. Not because youth makes the sacrifice less real, but because the opportunity cost is lower. If you work 80 hours a week at 24 and sacrifice some social life, you'll likely recover. The friendships can be rebuilt. The missed experiences are painful, but not irreplaceable. If you do the same thing at 40, when your kids are 8 and 11, when your marriage has been under-resourced for years, when your body has less resilience, the cost may be fundamentally different. This is not a prescription to grind hard when you're young and coast when you're older. It's an observation that timing matters. Know what season you're in, know what that season can afford, and calibrate accordingly. There is also something to be said for the kind of success that is built slowly, over decades, without requiring a single season of catastrophic sacrifice. The carpenter who works steadily for 40 years and builds a beautiful business without ever blowing up his family isn't less successful than the founder who raises venture capital and burns out by 35. In fact, he may be more successful by a measure that actually matters. Part 11. So is it worth it? I'll end the main content with the question you've probably been sitting with this entire time. Is it worth it? My honest answer is, it depends entirely on what it is and who you are. Success is worth pursuing. Ambition is a gift. The desire to build, create, contribute, and leave something behind is one of the most powerful forces in the human experience. But success, real success, the kind that doesn't hollow you out, requires you to define it yourself. To know the price before you start paying it. To make conscious trade-offs instead of accidental losses. To protect the things that matter most, even while you're giving enormous effort to your biggest goals. And to find meaning in the journey, not just the destination. The people who pay the price and don't regret it aren't the ones who paid less. They're the ones who paid intentionally, who chose their sacrifices, honored their non-negotiables, and built something that aligned with who they actually are. That's not a guarantee of happiness. Life doesn't come with guarantees. But it is the closest thing to a strategy for a life well lived that I know of. Success has a price. The question is never whether you'll pay it. The question is, are you paying for something you actually want? So here's what it all comes down to. Success is real, the price is real, and the choice, your choice, is the only thing standing between a life you designed and a life that just happened to you. You now know what it actually costs. You know the currencies, you know the hidden tax, you know the difference between sacrifice and loss, and you know the one question that changes everything. Am I paying for something I actually want? That question alone is worth more than any motivational speech you've ever heard. Now, if this gave you something to think about, hit that like button. It genuinely helps more people find this content. Share it with someone who's deep in the grind and needs to hear this. Subscribe if you want more honest conversations about success, mindset, and building a life that actually means something. And drop a comment below. What's one thing you've sacrificed in pursuit of your goals? And was it worth it? I read every single one. I'll see you in the next one.